Everyone wants to drive more traffic to their website and landing pages, but what happens once you get people onto those pages is just as important, if not more so. This is where a CRO comes into play. No matter how you drive traffic to your website, a good CRO strategy will get you more bang. Tune in to the Dominate Your Market podcast as Simon Girardin shares actionable tips and case studies that businesses should understand and realize that CROs generate wins and offer value that routes itself into the business.
I want to welcome you to the Dominate Your Market podcast, where we interview leaders, CEOs, founders, and high-impact business development professionals to get their insights on how you can grow your business efficiently, build an amazing company, and still have a life. Today's guest is Simon Girardin. Simon is a conversion rate optimization consultant who is passionate about research, testing, and the CRO process, which is short for conversion rate optimization. He desires to teach and inspire the CRO community through actionable tips and case studies. From his content, businesses should understand and realize that CRO does a lot more than generate wins and offers value that roots itself in the business DNA, creating levers that drive consistent and measurable growth and market domination. Dude, that last part, music to my ears. Simon, Simon, welcome to the show.
Michael, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here, and hopefully people who are listening to this will find some case studies that are inspiring. We'll learn about CRO, which is a discipline that's underknown from my perspective. So super happy to be here and share my knowledge.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I've got a 20-year background in digital marketing, actually 22-year background. And, you know, with websites way back, way before everything, social media and all that stuff. So what you do, I could geek out on in a heartbeat. But I think if we geek out on it, we might be a little bit too out there. So we want to make sure that we keep it fairly mainstream so everybody listens to it. Because a lot of our listeners are CEOs, business owners, they're founders. So I really want them to sort of understand the importance of CRO, because I think in every business, and I'm sure you agree to this, it's critical. CRO is massive, right? So when I came across you on LinkedIn, I was like, okay, this guy's getting on my podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. CRO is all about establishing a process in the business, developing a mindset, having different optics, and really kind of creating this entire environment and setup so that your business grows. So we'll make sure that we don't geek out too much and that we get actionable tips for people who are listening out here.
I appreciate that. So tell our listeners kind of what your background is, what got you to where you're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did a bachelor's in marketing. When I wrapped that up, I went immediately to a master's degree in e-commerce management. I was super passionate about the paid ads management that I was doing, working on campaigns. I tried doing some tests here and there, but I was very junior at the time. And so going into this program at university would elevate me into paid advertising and become, I thought I'd become one of the best. But what I found out doing these programs is actually I learned about different frameworks. I learned about things like the business model canvas, which is entirely unrelated, but it's more about innovation, about building a business, and about, shipping and getting feedback quick. And I was passionate about learning about these things. We also did multiple case studies of understanding businesses and how they pivot in the world. And that was an alien and weird concept to me. And we would study these things and understand that, okay, so actually there's things much more strategic and a lot more impact than just paid advertising. And I got really hooked onto that. And then I leaned into the data side, and I thought for a while that I would become a dashboard creator, a data scientist, and I would lean into this side of digital marketing. But in the end, kind of everything regrouped together as I discovered CRO, which is for me the absolute perfect role, because I get to do some of this data, but also get to do some strategy for the businesses. And then it's all about testing things that we ship, and then we get feedback and we iterate and we learn from it. So there's just this kind of all these different points of interest converge with CRO. And I almost discovered it by accident by actually following other people on LinkedIn. They were just posting interesting stuff, and I started expanding my network, and that's how I came into the expertise.
Well, it's interesting because when I think of CRO, and I want you to let our listeners know this. So I almost kind of picture like a B2C situation business to consumer, but is there a B2B play here as well?
Absolutely, yeah. As a matter of fact, we do work with B2B businesses, both that do e-commerce, but also that are on the SaaS side. So the real thing with CRO is one of the main constraints is your site needs to have a lot of traffic, and we need a decent amount of conversions for the analyses that we do to make sense. But that's for the testing part. There's other aspects of CRO that don't include testing that could be done for a business. But of course, most of the time when people mention CRO, it includes testing as part of it.
Yeah, so if B2B is part of this, so basically CRO, is it website driven? It's mostly on the website. It's conversion rate optimization that's related to the website.
Exactly. Yeah. The nature of the field is we do on-site testing and we use user and customer and market research to feed insights into this program that then we test against those insights and get the validation, either positive or not. But also it's also a philosophy, a way of seeing things doing CRO. And when we implement this process as part of the business, we're also trying to break down the silos. We're also trying to share the insights across the entire company. And so what we're trying to do is, although what we do is mostly on-site, we try to expand it and get further into the company. And actually the one insights benefits so many different teams that the growth that you see becomes exponential because of it.
You know what's interesting? I think a lot of CEOs, like my clients are CEOs and they're business owners, maybe a few of them are founders, but a lot of them kind of disregard the website, right? Like they're a manufacturing company, they're a construction company, a bigger construction company, things like that, right? Where they're like, website, what? Like, no, I just want to get clients. I want to service my clients. So talk about that a little bit, because, even like in manufacturing, like we've got clients that don't get a lot of traffic to their website, but I've sat down with them and said, wow, we need to fix this. Because even without doing any CRO, you can see the mistakes right in front of you, like within a matter of seconds. Homepage, the contact us page, the about page, you can go, whoa, we got a mess here. So talk about that a little bit, just where, you've got these, like say a manufacturing CEO, and I'm talking to him and I start talking about website conversion rate optimization. He's going to look at me cross-eyed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the weird thing nowadays is that internet is so easily accessible that for almost any business, either a website or social media or some sort of online presence is going to be part of the entire customer journey. And you can think of customer journey as for your own unique business. But the reality is for the customer, their journey is much wider. And your business is one touch point across others with direct competitors, with substitute competitors. They sometimes may compare your offer to something entirely different. The point being, most of the times nowadays, people use internet at some point in this customer journey. And I have a fun example. I worked with a business a couple years back. They're in the agriculture industry, and they provide massive appendages for tractors and farming equipment.
Oh, wow.
These guys created this entire persona guide that they showed to me as I was managing their paid advertising. And what I've quickly come to realize is they had a lot of expectations and assumptions that were entirely wrong. And so they assumed that their farmer clients, these people would go onto the tractor and open up their phone and scroll Twitter all day. That was a direct assumption as part of this document. But what we found out with Twitter advertising is no one resonated, no one clicked, no one watched. And so all this to say, customer journey is complex, but also as a business, when we're inside of it, we have so much knowledge that we actually have blind spots and we don't realize that customers don't have the level of information that we have. And sometimes if you don't have an online presence, be it a website or a social media page, wherever your audience is, then you're just missing out because they're searching for you and you're not there.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like when I get a lot of clients that I'm talking to early on in our relationship, they'll say, like, oh, we don't care about the website. Our business is relationships and referrals. And I say, okay, that's great. But at some point, they're going to check your credibility. And one way to check credibility is the website. And then if the website's old, outdated, broken, bad links, all of these things that are happening on that website, that could potentially change the mind of that referral. So here you got a referral and you think, okay, well, our current client referred them, but they maybe their buying process is step one, go to the website. Step two, check online reviews. right? On and on and on. And all of a sudden, fail the website, not enough reviews, fail. And then that referral went away, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Just one touch point in the customer journey. But if you miss it, maybe your customer's gone.
So do you guys use like heat maps and things like that as far as, and if you do, talk about that, because I think a CEO might go, heat map, what's that all about? So do you guys use heat maps?
Yeah, so we have a comprehensive research process which aims at having multiple research methods that approach customers and the market from multiple perspectives. We're just trying to get a full understanding of these customers, from hearing from them, from observing them, which are two different things. And they'll often say things that they don't do and vice versa. So it's important that we combine all those research methods. Heat maps, specifically, what they do is they just allow you to identify on your website points that customers click heavily on and points that they don't. So it allows you to understand elements that are important in their journey and elements that they miss. So then you can try and understand and match their behavior and where they click to whether it's what you want them and intend to do. So if you have a specific page, let's say your business has a specific technology and it's interesting and you have another value to showcase there. If you find out that your menu link and all your other anchor links that lead to this page are not being clicked on, then you realize that your audience, they don't have the intent of clicking there, but you're providing the value on this specific link. So there's a gap and there's an opportunity to improve here.
And what's interesting is it comes all the way down to like the words you use on buttons, the words you use in links, because I would say probably the majority of the time, if I do a quick little audit of a website before I talk to a client, just like a 5 or 10 minute little quick look, and I see like in the pull down menus, the titles they use. And then I click the title and I go to the page and I go, well, that doesn't match, right? Mm-hmm. Total disconnect there. And they're like, well, yeah, our web person put it together 3 years ago. By the way, remember what I just told you? 3 years ago, I'm like, oh shit, 3-year-old website, that's not good. But so when you think of conversion optimization, talk about the importance of like, God, the naming of buttons, just, really directing people along that buyer's journey.
Yeah, so across testing over at least 100 websites, what we've identified is there are some conversion roadblocks that come again and again for customers, just things that stop them in their track and are very likely to create an effect such as they stop whatever task they were onto, which is maybe buying, maybe getting information from you, maybe they were about to fill a form. But when these roadblocks happen, they just stop their journey and it makes them question everything, it makes them leave. Or sometimes they re-engage, but then they're skeptical. Multiple of these things happen. But yeah, your calls to action need to be important. You need to have a story and a positioning. You need to differentiate in the market. And just like your listeners here are very well aware, to dominate your market, you need to stand out. But there's also all this aspect of sometimes you are already part of the sea of sameness and you want to get out of it. So now you need to have the proper process and method to do so. And the best way to do it is to, one step at a time, chip at these things. But you first need some research to understand where are people at, where is our business at. And so all of this comes into a very comprehensive CRO process, and it's very hard to implement parts of it, but not the entirety of the beast.
When you think of CRO, for me, it's really critical. Number one, it's super critical, but I think it's like the internet. It's changing so fast, right? Which I'm sure for you, young guy, you probably enjoy that fast changing. What are you seeing out there now? Like when I launched like the world's first golf fitness membership site back in 2000, it was really cool in the world, right? Very, very cool. And it was a powerful website, 30,000 unique visitors a month to it. So it was a big website. But so when I think of like CRO back then and CRO 22 years later, what are you seeing currently that are some of the biggest issues for like business websites? What are you seeing are the bottlenecks right now?
Yeah, well, CRO has evolved a lot. And I know in the past, before even I got into the field, a lot of people would just, push out tests, ship a lot of tests. The problem with that is there's a lack of strategy. And how do you tie that to business goals? And for a CEO, if you're just testing stuff, but it's just like all disconnected and disjointed, how do you see exactly how it impacts your business? So nowadays, there's a real trend and movement towards first having a testing to learn approach. So you're not only trying to generate metric uplifts, but you're also trying to generate actual learnings that your business can then reapply. And so you're creating a flywheel by testing. You're also validating these web implementations. And the typical in-house CRO team will have a validated win rate of around 10 to 12%. So that means that 8 or 9 of their ideas are not succeeding. And that's probably with some sort of research process behind it. So what this tells us is most things that we want to implement live typically wouldn't perform better than what we already have on the website. So the testing to learn is important because then you do these experiments one at a time, and you get to validate not only if it works, but then you learn about the behavior. Because in the one single test, what you do is you isolate a single variable. So previously you said, maybe it's a headline on your website, or maybe it's a visual. Those two things are different variables, so you would test them apart. Or maybe it's your call to action. So if you want to change its placement or you want to change its copy, these are going to have different impacts, and you won't know until you test all of those things individually. So then you get the specific learnings. Typical trends that we see with businesses vary a lot, but also come down often to some sort of common ground of we need to differentiate in the market. We have a positioning that as the business we know is strong, but it's hard to get across to our customers so that they understand it, they see it, and they resonate with it. And sometimes it's also, we need to pivot the business. How do we do that?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of my chapters in my book, Dominate Your Market, is what I call market dominating position, which is basically a USP on steroids. It's like, it's not just a unique selling proposition. It's what can you do to differentiate by a mile from all your competitors, where you become a no-brainer decision for your ideal prospects, right? So, and that's kind of like what you're talking about, is that differentiating. And a lot of CEOs and business owners, even marketing teams in companies, they know it, but I feel, I get in there and start digging around and they're not really doing it. And then the testing, like you said, there's no strategy even to their testing. So for you said something super critical, one thing at a time, one variable at a time, because boy, if you do even 2, you will not know. You've got a 50% chance of which one it really was.
Exactly, yeah. That's the power of the process and the methodology that's being set up in place. And you start thinking in terms of customer insights. So we've seen them do this, or we want them to achieve that and we're not getting to it. So then we're designing a test to change the behavior. And I think the large misconception about CRO is that it's unvaluable tests. And that has root in previous practices. But if you're trying to assess right now a CRO practitioner to work with, or a team or firm and agency, try to understand, are they targeting behavior in their experiments? And if so, it's much more likely they're a good partner. Because if you focus on the customer behavior and you're trying to change it, then it's likely your experiment has an impact. And so the way that we phrase this is we try to make it so that the experience is entirely different. So when you look at the control on your test compared to the variant where you made the change, you want a customer to have an entirely different flow or perceive the information in a different manner. And you want to prompt them so that they act differently. That's how we track if our tests are succeeding or not.
I like that. That's amazing. That's awesome. Here's one thing I want our listeners to understand too. And this number may have changed, and I'd love to have you tell me if I'm right or wrong. So the average, back in the day, the average conversion rate was 1 to 3% on a website. And that was statistically proven. That was researched. Is that number still there? What number is that right now? Like what? And if for our listeners, what I mean by that is somebody lands on a website and takes an action. That would be what we would consider a conversion. Now, then you can take it all the way down to where they actually buy something on an e-commerce site, or they sign up for something, but some kind of an action they take on a website would be what we call a conversion. What's the percentage rate? What's the current percentage rate, do you think?
I would say 1 to 3 is still pretty reliable. We see some websites who succeed to outperform that by lots. And it's just a matter of, they know exactly what traffic to attract. So the people who land on that website, they're all somewhat qualified to be at least interested with the content. They resonate and they engage strongly. And then it's a matter of having a good product market fit. It's a lot of different variables that tie in together. But yeah, 1 to 3% is pretty close to the norm, I would say.
Yeah, because I think if a business owner or a CEO hears those numbers, it's quite shocking. Because think about that. If you've got, like, let's say a construction company, and they get 10 visitors a day to the website. Okay, that's 300 visitors a month to the website. Well, 1 to 3% is a very low number, right? So a lot of these CEOs, and a lot of them that have been in business for a while, they know these numbers a little bit, but I always bring these numbers up early on to a new client, because when you set the expectations, I'll go into the Google Analytics and say, well, let's see how many visitors you're getting. And I show them they're getting 30 a month, like in a month, 30.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, okay, well, let's look at the average conversion rate of 1 to 3%, right? Then that goes down to nothing. And they're like, wow, holy crap, really? And then I have to educate them on only 1 to 3% of people are ready to buy right now. And that's statistically proven as well. So here's a question for you. When it comes to CRO, and if we know that the 1 to 3% is kind of the number across the board, what do you do as a CRO expert to try to encourage a quick conversion on a website? Give our listeners some tips on what could be a quick conversion tactic.
Right. So there's multiple models of heuristics that exist on the market that are super interesting, because they kind of express different levers that exist on your website and with your customers. And a bunch of them basically come down to, there's anxiety that happens when people have doubt, they have fear, they have uncertainties. If you're able to rule that out, that helps. There's also distractions. So your customers have one task in mind, or you're trying to direct them there. Everything that pops up in their screen and distracts them might disrupt the experience enough that they never come back to what they were doing before. Then there's their motivation. How strongly are they intent on doing what they're about to? And the more there's motivation, the more they're likely to push this through. So you can try to reinforce that to match your content and kind of reassure them, reinforce them, and provide this alignment between what they want and what you offer. And there's a bunch of other things. There's, in some specific cases, urgency, kind of rush people out. And I know companies like Ticketmaster do that, and most people are annoyed. You have this timer on the top of your screen, and you have this very limited time to get your tickets. Most of the time, you can refresh your page, timer resets, and you still have tickets. But for some reason, this urgency gets people to drop the credit card right here, right now, no second thought. There's more. There's like reinforcing stimulus and just kind of getting people excited with the positive aspects of your website or products. So there's multiple levers here, but these kind of frameworks, heuristics, they help you kind of summarize them and have a more simplified version of what we can do to affect customer behavior. But in reality, there exists as many different types of experiments as the number of experiments that have been run.
Well, it's interesting when you talk to a client and you say, what's your goal from your website? What's the goal of your website? Why do you have a website? And I ask that question. It's a pretty blunt question, right? Like, well, I have to have a website. It's a business website. And then I'll do a screenshot and I'll say, well, I don't know what your company's about. And the CEO goes, what do you mean? What do you mean? We do X. I don't see that anywhere. Well, it's great. And then all of a sudden they start stuttering. They're like, right? So it's interesting because I think a lot of websites are designed not for the customer journey or the buyer journey. They're designed by the company and their needs. And like a good example would be, oh, we want people to call us. Oh, that's the key. We want a phone call. Well, we know in our crazy world, how many people are ready or want to pick up a phone and call that company? Right?
Totally.
So as a CRO guy, what would you do there, right? I mean, I kind of know, but I want you to tell people.
So it's important to understand who's your customer, and this is a perfect example. We start with research, and we have to understand when people land on this page, how do they behave, and where do they click, where do they go? And try to understand the typical paths and the routes that they take. Because a couple of things can happen. Is first, if you just drive multiple people to call you, you might get your team to be super busy, but the quality of callers, no one wants that. So if you want to attract the right callers, you need to first give them the right information up front. We need the research to support that. But then it's a matter of, yes, helping customers understand, where am I? What can I do? And also, why should I trust you or choose you over the other options that exist? Then it's also a matter of trying to understand typical questions and objections that they have. For that, our favorite research method is conducting exit intent polls. So on your website, you just tag Hotjar and set up this simple poll that asks, what, if anything, prevented you from whatever is your converting action from converting today? And what that does is it helps you understand what are the main objections that people have. And typically we'll see price being one of those objections. But other times we'll see things like, well, I'm not sure, let's say for a construction company, well, I'm not sure that this truck has the decent weight for the job that I'm trying to accomplish. Or I'm not sure that the horsepower will allow me to pull this big trailer that I have on mine. And so the more you start to understand these questions and these objections, then you match content to that. If that person calls, then they're more qualified and it makes more sense. But you also need to understand, are these customers the type that want to call you? Because maybe if you offer them another option, they will convert, but if you offer them the call, they won't. So it's important to understand who's a customer and what context they're in.
I love what you said about matching content, because it really comes down to content, right? I mean, it's literally on a website, because a lot of the clients that I work with, they don't understand this, but you can get the website to do a lot of the heavy lifting, right? And a great example would be having a section for frequently asked questions, right? And Marcus Sheridan, do you know heard of Marcus Sheridan, the content guy? I mean, he's like the guy, he's like the GOAT, right? He's been around forever. And he talked about that 15 years ago. I'll never forget, like he talked about even, he said this, the company that puts their pricing on their website wins. And even today, he still does keynote speeches telling people you're not putting your price on the website. People will not contact you unless they at least have a range, right? And so that, like what you said, it's matching the content with what their intent is at that moment, right?
And it's also, what are their other options on the market? Because if other competitors are just entirely unrelated, but substitute competitors offer a pricing or offer more clarity, then on your case with no pricing, you're leaving customers with doubts and anxieties possibly, and they might not be so sure coming onto a call with what to expect. While on the other end, if you provide pricing and you're transparent, then you start developing that trust, So when these customers are going to call, because the trust is already established, there's way more potential to work upon it and add up to it.
It's interesting. I have a son who's 27, very, very smart young man, graduated magna cum laude from Arizona State. He married a girl who graduated magna cum laude as well. Really high level, smart kids. And so I take them to lunch, and I have a little bit of an ulterior motive when I take them to lunch. And it is, I ask them things like, hey, you guys, when you get on a website, like, what's your biggest beef? What's your biggest complaint? And here's what they say. If you don't tell me what I want to know right up front, I am not going to contact you. And then here's what I said. Well, tell me more about that. And I said, talk about maybe you need to go to a dentist. And they said, yeah, we want to know pricing. So here we go, right? And they said it, not me. And I said, really? And they said, yeah, if I don't have an idea of what this is going to cost me, I'm not calling you. And I thought, wow, right? So here I'm talking to people, they're my children, and they don't know it, but I'm paying for their lunch, by the way, so they're getting a free lunch. But I'm hearing this information and going, wow, right? Like, if only business owners would know, these are what people are saying about businesses with their websites, is the more information you can give people, now you're informing them to make a better decision, and they will contact you. And that goes right into what you do for a living, conversion rate optimization, right?
Absolutely. It all comes back to your content speaks for yourself, and it's kind of also your offline sales representative. You don't have to hire anyone onto the website when the website is clear on itself. And I just have this perfect example of a business that we helped entirely reposition and pivot in their industry. They're a startup on a software as a service type product, and they are attacking a market that's already saturated, filled with people who are big name brands. They have these huge customer bases. And this client of mine is trying to penetrate this market and kind of establish themselves.
Mm.
They are this challenger, and we find out with market research that a lot of the competitors are all similar. They all have an abusive amount of features that they put forward on their websites, and that's really what they communicate across is we have all the features that you need. And they also are renowned for having acquisition tactics that are really interesting for customers, but they then get slapped year 2 and year 3 with big price upgrades that are not interesting. And so with this client, what we did is from these research insights, we started testing how we can position them differently. And we decided to be very bold and attack the market. And we have 3 different tests that all helped us nail this positioning. The first one was just, we spoke to the pain points of having the price increases. Also, the switching cost is high. So we spoke to that. And then with this one test, we speak to pain points and we say, we know you experienced that in the market. It's not going to happen here. Huge uplift of 14% on the website. Then we cycle that with a second test. We iterate and we want to test further. And we're understanding that these features are what these businesses put forth, but that's not what really customers care about. And so we made an entire content module and we spoke very directly about how the fact that these features are not useful to most people and that you really shouldn't be paying for features you don't use. That resonated strongly. And we got another 9% lift from that. But it's also learnings that we're stacking one on top of the other. So it's not only metrics, right? And then a third test. Now we switched that onto a landing page. And what we did is rework just a bulleted list content and a product image to just show exactly what is the product. But instead of just describing it, you were describing what you can achieve with it. So you can already feel like, oh, it's almost like as if I was using the tool, but I'm just reading the page. So just by fitting and aligning the content to these customers, suddenly this business has repositioned themselves and is in a much better place.
You said something critical, addressing pain points. If so many companies do a feature dump, right? You get to the website and it's just all about them. It's all about their product, their service, and nothing about the solution. Mm-hmm. And even in 2022, almost 2023 now, it's still happening over and over again, where you go to a website, $20 million company, $50 million company, and all they're talking about is their product, their service, and nothing to do with the end benefit of their ideal prospect.
Absolutely. And as part of the customer journey, your customer is not looking for a product and it's not looking for a service either. They have a goal in mind or they have a problem they're trying to solve. And so what I like from what you said is what you actually offer as a company, whatever it is a solution to something. So when you start positioning it like this, then you can start having emotional load in your message. And the more your messages are loaded with emotions, then suddenly people start resonating with that when it makes sense. So it's super important that you understand the customer journey that includes not only your business, but also the other touch points your customer has been involved with. And then you need to match your content to realize here's the pain points they experience, the gains they're looking to get from this experience. But also I'm aware of the other options they have on the market. So that's the best way for a customer to realize that, okay, I'm not being bullshitted here.
That's awesome. I've got one of the simplest explanations of what business owners should understand. So people don't buy a drill, they want the hole.
Exactly. Yeah,
right?
The jobs to be done framework, right?
Yes. So I mean that is, I heard that years and years and years ago. People don't buy the drill, they want the hole. And the drill is a means to an end. And that, there you go, right there, that people, if you could switch the information on your website to serve your ideal prospect as the solution, not the features, you are so far ahead of the game. And you are probably you're gonna dominate, there's my word, you're gonna dominate most of your competitors because everybody's still playing the sameness game. They're all the content looks the same, they offer the same, everything's the same. They have not taken the time as a team to sit down and say, how can we create a positioning in the marketplace that just is perceived as pure dominant? And that's, so CRO, what you do has a huge part of that, so that's why I had you on. I know we're running out of time now, but I was so excited to have you on and you delivered. I appreciate all your information. I was so excited to have you on. But I have one last question for you. I asked this of all of my guests, and none of them know it's coming. It's a pretty basic question. But what is one of the last books you've read that's had an impact on you? And try to say one that isn't, like a mainstream one. If it is, that's fine. But what's one of the last books that you feel like this is a great book?
I hope you like my answer. My book is Be More Pirate by Sam Conniff. This book is giving me goosebumps right now. I just talk about it and I still get goosebumps. I'm on my second read right now, the same year. And this book is just great because first there's pirate knowledge. So it's just like you dive into the fantasy aspect of pirates. But what I found striking about the book and now that it's written, it's the author uses examples of pirates from the Golden Age. And he kind of matches that to modern entrepreneurs of nowadays. And how these guys dominate in their own ways and they create their own categories. And if you know the term category pirates, that comes from that book. And you should absolutely read it. Just the mix of slight fantasy history, but also matches with businesses that outperform and also behaviors that lead people to have success. Definitely, it's going to take something to beat this book on my top one.
Okay, so let's say it again. You have an accent, so I didn't quite understand it. What's the name again?
Sam Conniff.
Okay. What's
like
the
Samuel,
name?
Sam
Conniff. How do you spell the last name?
Connif.
Oh, Conniff. Okay, and then the title of the book one more time?
Be More Pirate.
Be More Pirate?
Yes.
Oh my gosh! Wow. Okay, that's awesome. I will definitely put that on my list. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
So if people want to find out about you or your company, give us websites, give us LinkedIn, email address, whatever you're comfortable with.
Sure. So there's one place to find me. It's on LinkedIn. There I just post content daily on basically stuff that we discussed today. So what happens on my client calls with the companies that I work with in optimization, I give tips on how to run research. Research is so important and critical, and businesses forego it just because it's not a habit and no one is really qualified. But the reality is you can run a research easily. You can do some tidbits here and there, and it's better than nothing. And it's also better than hiring these super expensive firms that provide you just this kind of one deliverable in time. So we're big proponents of run research all the time in small bits and increments. I share case studies and I just share about my passion with CRO. And as you've probably gotten, I love the process. Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn and you just have to /Simon.Girardin and you'll find me there.
Okay, and I'm going to spell your last name, Girardin.
Right.
Okay, and that'll be in the show notes on my website as well. Is there a website that you want anybody to go to at all, or no?
No, not necessarily. You can just find me on LinkedIn.
Just look for your link. Simon, thank you so much for your time today. I so appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. It was a blast.
Oh, awesome. And I will see you back on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
You've just listened to the Dominate Your Market podcast with CEO, business consultant, and author Michael Peterson. Growth-minded CEOs hire Michael to explode their revenues, build an amazing company, and create a transformational mindset that encapsulates growth, success, and ultimately happiness. His book, Dominate Your Market, is creating quite a stir in the marketplace. Go to dominateyourmarketbook.com and get your first chapter free.